You guys, if you want to hold off. Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to Couch Conversations with the Doctors, where true health is what is tonight. It is Monday night, and it is time for Couch Conversations with the Doctors. And I see right now I'm not going to be able to read anybody's comments because I left my glasses at work on my desk. But I will find another pair around here in a minute. On tonight, our illustrious panel that is always here with us, starting with my coworker who leaves me to go have fun in the sun, but it's okay. I forgive him anyway. Let's say hey to Dr. Douglas Graham. Dr. Graham?
Hey, Nikki, I do appreciate your forgiveness. I can take your forgiveness from anybody and everybody. Thank you. I'm a retired physician. I spent 30 years working in the western suburbs, and 2 years after that, I worked with a congressman in his office on healthcare issues. It's a real honor to be here with my colleagues. I want to try and answer your questions if I can.
Outstanding, outstanding. I want to say hey to Linda Johnson, who is popping in here with us. To the urologist of the stars who hates accolades, but he keeps those men together, and he continues to have his Sunday morning conversation on health. That's our very own Dr. Terry Mason on Clear Channel. Dr. Mason?
Thank you very much, Nikki. That's on the WVON, AM 1690, and you can always go and get it at WVON.com. But thank you for that, and always glad to be a member of Couch Conversations, and hopefully that we'll be able to add something to the conversation tonight and answering questions or making comments.
Outstanding, outstanding. To the weight loss guru, that family medicine practice doctor, but of course we know that he's really the Wolfgang Puck. Hampton. Dr. Hampton?
Thank you, Nikki. Again, honored to be here. Really appreciate you guys, and I love helping people heal, sharing messages of wellness. I'll share in the chat, Nikki, that on Thursday I'll be in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, representing our organization. We have a kind of an opportunity to talk about how to help people heal. And I'm going to share it because it's a free, like Facebook Live kind of thing, similar to what we do here. And it'll just be me and a guy by the name of Chad Roper, who has his own kind of show. And it'll just be, just some thoughts about how we can heal. And I will frame it from the perspective of there's multiple ways to heal. So I'll give, my take on taking different dietary patterns, why those different patterns can help you heal. And then I'll kind of dive into some other things that people need to be aware of, like should we have supplements and things of that nature. So I'll put that in the chat so that people who are available Thursday evening can check it out. It probably will be recorded and remain on Chad's website, but I just want to put that out there. Again, it's all about getting the message to the right people at the right time. And if we can do that, we will save lives. So again, thank you for tonight, the opportunity, and let's have a conversation.
Outstanding. I want to say hey to Virginia Knight, who is here with us. She says, evening, one healthy, happy Monday. Thank you so much, Virginia, for sharing that with us. Well, the congressman may be jumping in late. He is. So stay tuned so you can grab all your favorites who's going to come in, and let's start this conversation. Well, Dr. Mason, lead us on.
Well, it's always good to have a conversation talking about health. Right now, this is the political season, and people are making all kinds of statements about different things, and violence is at the top of that list for, I think, both candidates. And I think that we really need to maybe think about that as we have our conversation, our dialogue tonight, because that is up top of mind. And I have some of my own ideas that have contributed to this, and we've talked about that before. But that and the other thing about just the state of our health and I don't mean health in just the terms of absence of disease, but in our ability to thrive and prosper. And lastly, with the death of a couple people this over this last few days, Dr. Reuben Nichols, we talked about last week, but just what has happened as I think about these men who are trailblazers, men and women who are trailblazers, and had so much to do with people like myself and others getting started, providing us opportunities and providing us with advice on what we should do. So those are the things I think we could talk about tonight.
Yeah, and I think all of the things that you talked about has an impact on us. And, sometimes life seems easy, and then sometimes life seems hard. And I'm learning that it's kind of always a struggle as we kind of navigate through life. It's rare that you wake up, every day of the month and are like, man, that went by fairly smoothly. It's always a challenge. And so I always tell patients when I talk to them that it's really important that you learn how to manage the struggle, because the struggle is inevitable. And the way you manage it is really the key. And I just think that rather it's some type of trauma you experience, rather because you may be a victim of violence yourself, or you struggle with self-control and you may be prone to violent behavior. In either situation, you are capable of handling stress better, and you're capable of dealing with stress better. So never settle for your current state. Always realize that a lot of people are dealing with stressors. A lot of people are having losses. A lot of people have been victims of violence. A lot of people have trauma because of that. So the question is, what are the people who are successful dealing with that doing that you can learn from? And I think it's nice to periodically learn from others who have taken, an experience of others and then become better because of it. So in that scenario, there's less often that you'll then be having to go through what they went through, because you've learned something that has prepared you and equipped you with what you need. So when you're facing that struggle, you'll know how to overcome it. But I think recognizing, going back to the kind of the cloud example, you'll see a struggle come into your life. Your goal is to acknowledge it and then to let it kind of pass by. And eventually it will pass by. But while it's over your head, what are you going to be able to learn from that struggle? You may want to reassess, how did I deal with that struggle? Did I handle it better than the last time I faced a similar struggle? And those are the types of things I think that will help us navigate. Literally this weekend, I was on Saturday. I'm gonna be honest with you, I hate guns. I wish they were illegal. I'm just being honest. I don't care about the Constitution and hunting. That's just my personal belief. But I have a concealed carry because I feel like I have to have a concealed carry, right? So as I'm kind of walking through the experience of dealing with this gun, I've become better at the gun because I went to the range and I had a review course and I had a chance to learn and feel comfortable with this thing that I don't like. And so at the end of that experience, I was better. I was more comfortable with that concealed carry and this weapon that could be so harmful. And that's kind of how you're going to have to go through life. You're going to face some things that you don't want to face. You're going to learn some things that you need to learn to face it, and then you're going to be better. So, and that's kind of how I see life. I don't expect my life to be easy. I don't expect your life to be easy. And all we have to do is just get better at dealing with this thing called life. And if we do that, because we're human, we'll then be better tomorrow. And maybe we can teach our kids and our grandkids how to deal with these things so that when they're navigating through life, they'll be better prepared as well.
Well, don't everybody else jump at once.
So I was just listening to Dr. Tony, and I was just reflecting the difference between now and previously is we are being bombarded through many, many different sources with many, many different ideas about what we should and shouldn't do. And our society hasn't caught up with that yet. We haven't really decided this is good, this is bad, this is not useful, this is dangerous. We've kind of had rather been rather free spirited about it. And I think that that's created a certain amount of instability, lack of predictability, and perhaps demand for attitudes and actions that weren't there previously. And I don't think we've caught up with it yet. So I do think it takes some understanding to say this is today and this is now, but this may not be tomorrow or the future. And it's really our responsibility to think about this and be careful about what we want our future to look like.
And for our docs who just joined us, Dr. Miller, Dr. P, we were just talking about, the violence and the stress that we all face, and just ways to kind of think through that topic. And we shared a couple of our thoughts about, how do you manage your life and help others in a world filled with so much, right? And like Dr. Graham has suggested, the awareness of it, right? I mean, so when you're so aware, you think the world's worse than it really is. I would argue, I'm not sure, I haven't looked at the data, but was things really that much worse 10 years ago, 20 years ago? And sometimes I'll see data that suggests not necessarily. So it's the awareness that may be the bigger issue. So that's kind of where we kind of started the conversation, if you guys want to chime in.
Yeah, I think social media certainly has almost like created a gasoline kind of environment where the sparks and the fire hasn't changed, but now because of social media, because of the algorithms, because of artificial intelligence, it feeds you more of what you desire. And so if you desire violence, world star, somebody slamming somebody's head up against something, the longer you watch it, the more they'll feed it to you. And then all of a sudden, you go from sitting in your living room, world star, to you're in a traffic dispute, and now you want a world star in real life. Well, it doesn't work like that, because using the safety of your home in one situation, now you're out in the street, and now that person that you're beefing with over a traffic light now has a gun, and they've been watching World Star too. So it's really bad. I mean, I've even noticed now, even the threat of violence against healthcare providers has gotten more. Now, I don't know is that new or not, but I can tell you, it used to be a time you didn't threaten the person that was trying to take care of you. Even if you didn't like him, you thought to yourself, the guy's trying to do the best he could. We disagree about it. I want this medicine. He wants to give me that. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to try to hurt him or any of the other people, the nurses, the clerks, or whoever. But that's becoming an increasing problem. So it's crazy.
Yeah. When I really look at it and sort of evaluate these situations, life it's almost like, when I really look at an automobile, we look at automobiles from years ago. They were not as sleek, not as fast. Life has gone to a different gear. It's a lot faster. And when I say that, I'm talking about the things in terms of how people action takes place. So we're moving so fast that oftentimes it seems like people don't have time to really think things through. And oftentimes you don't. Oftentimes you're faced with a situation where you got to make a decision in a split second as to what you're going to do, or you may suffer some harm. But that slowing down means that we slow down enough to talk to one another, enough to also look at what and why these problems have arisen, and look at doing something in terms of our solution to address those things. We all the things like social media and all these things are. I don't think the purpose of them initially was to create a lot of the things that are going there. However, the fact of the matter is not that the media itself didn't. People are spooked by some of these things, and people see stuff that I think back when I was a young person, um, and something happened in China. I might not have heard about it until a month later. Not I don't just mean me personally. The people in my community may not have heard about it until a month later. But now it's a matter of a few minutes, less than an hour, where the whole world is aware of these things, and just like that, that means that all the things that are going on around us is being broadcast by some kind of media to a bunch of other people. And so that created its own set of circumstances and difficulty that we have to deal with. So it's how can I keep my pace so that I don't really get pushed into this traffic going at that rate, and still survive, still kind of keep some of the principles that I've learned over life, and try to over my life, and try to help to make things better in terms of how I communicate with other people, how I respond to other people, and that I do it in a way that ultimately, do I love people? And when I'm responding, am I responding in a loving and caring way, or am I just allowing myself to just become a part of whatever's going on and react in that same manner? And these, so those are the things I think that we have to sort of look at and figure out what can I do to try to help to slow down this violence? Even though you may not have have a violent nature about yourself, the circumstances all around you is going on, so you really don't control it. It has its own energy, its own vehicle that it's being transported in, and so you're part of it, whether you want to be or not, because you're not on an island. You're not locked into a room, so you have to interact. You have to be out there with it, and so I think that we got to start looking at, because I think that it's that lack of knowing each other, lack of caring and showing, and not being afraid to show that we love one another. And there are situations, I understand that sometimes when you express love, you may be taken advantage of by someone who think that as being that you're weak and that you really don't know what's going on, and they want to take advantage of you. But I think that is that at the end of the day, if we're going to teach our children and our grandchildren and other young people that we mentor or interact with, we have to figure out a way to get those messages across. And I think those are things that can, I think, help to change this rapid environment of violence and all the other things that we really don't want to be occurring in the way that it is.
The question I would ask, when we were growing up, we had a different way to measure who was popular, who was liked, what sort of behaviors were popular, what sort of things you did that were good or liked. And now we have this, to get to your point about what social media has done. It has ascribed or helped, and you guys can react to it, but it seems to me that it has helped to ascribe value in a way to things that we would not have normally valued. It creates a kind of artificial notoriety that unfortunately is fed by our media and other things and other programming unrelated to what's going on in social media, but regular movies and television that seem to place a kind of value on this how many likes or how many views or those sorts of things, whether it be a good thing or not. And I'm just wondering, are these things helping to reset our brain, to your point, Dr. Pete, on how we should behave?
See, I share what Dr. Mason is saying. I remember when I was a young boy, I'd go over to the neighbors read comic books, and I'd read Superman and Spider-Man and Batman. My parents said, no comic books in the house. Well, now you watch these movies, these blockbusters, and you're going to see 5 Spider-Mans, 5 Batmans, and what they can do has translated from this thin piece of paper to this huge screen, and it changes your idea of what we can and can't do. And it creates a certain imagination, a certain set of values, which I think we don't necessarily see other actions and activities in this arena that help you get along with people. We see force, we see violence, we see destruction as a means of achieving your ends almost all the time.
Yeah. One of the questions that I would throw into this, where we're talking about now, is has our value system really changed? Um, do our society value things differently than we did 50 years ago or before that time? Because it's the value that we have that determine our behavior. Because that's what that drives us to do and to achieve certain things based on what we value. I mean, if we value being the baddest and the biggest, or if we value being the most kind and loving, I mean, it determines how you behave. And so I think that that's a question that we probably need to really look into how and how much and our value system has changed from the way that it used to be.
So, Dr. Miller, I don't think we've caught up yet. And I think the failed bank in Silicon Valley is a perfect example where growth is good, profit is good, risk is good, and it's good until it fails. And then when it fails, it hurts lots of people. And we haven't gotten into this. It's fascinating to see what's happened in England, where the teachers and doctors are on strike because healthcare and education have been underfunded for years. So I would anticipate we're going to get to that set of circumstances. It is amazingly discouraging to know that most of our teachers are getting wages below the national poverty level when they start. How is that possible? How can we invest in our community and our children by underpaying those people who have some of the most important roles? It's mind-boggling to me. So I think we haven't caught up yet. We haven't recognized the consequences of our behavior yet.
Yeah, I think I always remember how I always told my kids that what happens in the Hampton household may be different than what happens in the other households. And so there will always be, it goes back to this idea of we will always have struggle. So the question is, how are you going to react to struggle? And so the first part of this thought is, I think that our values have not necessarily changed. Maybe what we tolerate has changed, but like when we were younger, they said it was bullying, right? Mm-hmm. Well, now we got cyberbullying. So how do we address cyberbullying? Do we address it the same way? Well, we do have to learn a new skill set to do that because it's a different animal. We may even have to get experts on technology involved to help us think through how we deal with it. But we have to deal with it differently. And then we have kids who maybe their old version of staying on the video game too long is now just, get you in the house on time. I remember when I was a kid, my mom would say, okay, when the street lights, are going out, you need to come home. And so maybe that's the equivalent of playing a video game. I just was doing it in a different, that was a different kind of addiction, the addiction of not wanting to go home. And so I think, we have values that we have to continue to give our kids and to give ourselves. And one thing I had to do for my phone, and even as a social media influencer, I had to I look at my social media in the morning and at night, and I had to turn off the pings on your phone. Somebody's made a comment on a YouTube video. Somebody liked something you posted on LinkedIn. So I had to turn that stuff off because it's a damage to not only your own brain and your brain having some reprieve from it, but maybe you're not going to be as efficient because you have all this technology. So clearly I like technology. We're doing a interactive live using technology. So you got to love it a little bit, but then you have to compartmentalize it. And as a responsible person for yourself and for your family, you have to have rules of engagement. So that's what we do. We tell our kids who are adults now, but say, hey, you can only do this at a certain time. If we're going to do A, you have to do, we recently made a decision that since the graduate school does virtual teaching as well, okay, you can spend an extra week or two at home while you're, in school because the school allows for that. So we have to be flexible enough to understand technology gives you flexibility, but you need some old school. You need some old school that will remind you that values and basic, family traditions have to be maintained. So I think you have to navigate and do things that are going to align with your values while not being so, I like rap music, but I prefer to listen to Common. I want to listen to somebody who's going to add value to my life. I don't want to listen to rap music I'm not going to demonize rap music because some artists don't do it the way I would do it. But I just think we need to live in a world where we navigate. And that's kind of what I've done personally. That's what I do with my family. And by doing that, you benefit from technology. The number of people I can reach that's making a video is different than I saw 20 people today. So I embrace technology, but I recognize its limitations and how it can also cause harm.
There was a song I remember I went to see. Now, this may date me, so that's all right, guys. But I went to see Janet Jackson when she was in town for her tour some years ago. And she was singing a bunch of her songs. But she was one song that she sang where she made the statement. She said, "How empty of me to be so full of you." And that stuck with me because, as we have this conversation right now, how many people do we know are empty or are looking for something to fill whatever that void is that creates that emptiness in their life? And how many people like that will be filled with something that really isn't good for them, but may give them appearance or give them the feeling that there is something that is filling that void that is good for them, which may be doing just the opposite.
One question I like to throw into this is, we grew up in a time. I grew up in a time when it seemed like there were more guidance and rules, and so now we are in a time where it seems like it's all about what you can negotiate. I mean, kids can negotiate with their parents things that I seem like that they don't. That, you know what I'm saying? It's okay to be able to negotiate if you have an understanding and the knowledge to be able to know what it is that you need. But without that, you're still in that process of it's not a, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't. So that effect of not having the rules and the guidance. I mean, we say certain things to our kids, but then we sort of back up from it and negotiate what the process is going to be, and they're not old enough, don't have enough experience to know what is good or bad for them. They haven't had enough interaction with the outside world. So so that is.
Did he freeze?
I don't know if he froze or not. All I'd say about negotiate, you would negotiate with equals. A child is not my equal. Okay, a child is not my equal. I don't negotiate with a child. We may have a conversation, but I'm not necessarily going to negotiate. And I think that there are ways to have a conversation, But at some point, somebody has to be the one who makes the decision. And that someone that makes the decision should be one who has better grasp of the entirety of what is being discussed rather than the very focused, limited vision about what it is they want at that particular point in time. That's my opinion.
And I'm comfortable with that because, like, obviously you're going to have a different conversation with a 5-year-old than a 25-year-old, right? So, but I did learn when my kids were at Providence themselves, when they did a kind of a onboarding for the parents, they made it very clear, and I read about it later, you don't have rational thoughts or rational abilities until you're about 25, right? So if your emotional development maybe is a little bit further down the road, maybe you'll be a more emotional person who makes irrational decisions, right? So as a parent who's providing guidance and coaching and at times mentoring, I think it's important that you always define your role in that relationship. So I do consider my sons friends, but there's always this layer of respect. It's just certain things it's weird to have kids who are able to order alcohol. It's like, that's weird when you're at, the restaurant, right? But there's always this layer of respect. And for us, there's still some dependence. My kids are, one's still in school, one's done with school, but they're still kind of dependent on us to a certain extent. So there's another layer of respect that comes with that. And actually, one of the things about being in a position where people depend on you is that comes with consequences. So if you're living with your parents, or if you're dependent on your parents, then you got to still follow the parents' rules. That's a consequence of being in that situation. So I think you give respect, you treat them as adults depending on their age, but you have to maintain that certain level of authority while hearing their voice. If you don't hear their voice, you may parent more, but you may not parent as well, because sometimes they have solutions to their own problems. Sometimes they can add insights you hadn't thought about. Our kids are very smart in general. All of our kids are smart. So you don't want to be so authoritarian that you don't hear them. But what I try to do is listen to them and recognize that because of my position, I'm in the position of power. I never give that power away. And if we have parents who didn't do that, didn't give that power away, they would be better parents, they would be better spouses and everything else, because sometimes we don't realize the power that we do have.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, I came from a more traditional, you do what I say or else you're going to get popped upside your head. Now, I'm not saying I don't parent like that, okay? But I do remind my kids that that's where I came from. So that even though I'm the new school dad that can listen and, well, what do you mean by that? Like, really engage in this sort of, discussion, like this sort of academic discussion. But I do want them to know at the end of the day, the decision will be made by me. And I say that, and even from a spiritual perspective, I really take it as my responsibility that sometimes I got to be the bad guy. And the bad guy is going to say something to you that, I know won't make me a popular, I'm not going to be the ha ha he dad, right? But at least I'm telling you what I think you need to hear, because I'm making these decisions knowing that one day I won't be here. That's a harsh kind of reality. And that if you can hear me one day when you're 30 or 40 and maybe dad is here, maybe not, but the point is you can remember, you know what, there was a similar situation as this, and you'll call on that kind of wisdom. So I believe, like Terry said, you got half the truth or half of the picture and you trying to act like you know everything. And that's like what a lot of these kids are doing. They're out here wilding out and with a incomplete development of a cerebral cortex. They're not completely able to put all the pegs in the right hole, but yet they're making these really adult kind of decisions that could have life-changing. Like, just think about the kids that was the two basketball players from, I think it was Alabama. These kids were talented, headed someplace, was talking to this girl. The girl did not want to reciprocate their advancements. The boyfriend sitting in the back seat, the boyfriend rolled down the window and said, "Hey man, this is my girl. Whatever she says, they'll leave her alone." These kids who got a promising career ahead of you, you make a decision. You're gonna take out a gun. First of all, where you get the gun from? Okay, whoever handed you the gun, where you get the gun from? Okay, you in college. You're a college basketball. Where are you having a gun? Now that's neither here nor there. But then you make the decision. Somehow something clicked in you to say, I'm gonna make a life-changing. I'm gonna shoot and kill this girl. For what? Because she told you no? Like what? So I would, I'm sort of, here's like the scientist that's in me to say, let's do a sentinel event on this. Like, take me back to, I want to know this whole kid's history. I want to go back to his family. I want to go back to his daddy's family. I want to go back to his mama. I want to find out, where did this kid get to the point where he didn't make a good decision? It was just a smart decision just to say, oh, okay, no problem. Hey, I'm a handsome young man. You're going to leave me out here. I'm going to go talk to another girl, whatever. But you shoot the girl? I just think we've lost some of that control, some of that, we've lost the Terrys and the Dr. Millers and the Dr. Grahams and the Dr. Hamptons. We've lost the access to you, and they have a lot of access to foolishness. And so I think that's an issue as well.
No, Pete, I completely agree with you. Want to say hey to Arlene Spencer, who's here. She says good evening. To Nellie Purnell King, who is here. She says good evening to everyone. Thank you, Tony, for putting that that resource into the text, into the comment section just as well. And Audrey Jaycox is here, and she says good evening. And bad decisions with promising futures. You are so right. I first of all, let me apologize. I was not laughing at you. I was laughing with you, but I just couldn't stomach it because I was in my 30s and I was never my parents' friend. Where did that come from? I'm shocked. That's why I had to laugh. I was never my parents' friend. I mean, and now my aunt is watching, and that's Arlene Spencer, my father's sister. And I must say there was a time my daddy and I were closer than my mother and I. I'm a daddy's girl, so we were closer. And even though my father he never called himself my friend. He said, "I'm your daddy, but I can be your buddy too." But it was still, "I'm your daddy first." And being the daughter, being a PK first of all, but being the pastor's daughter, I always got 3 answers to every question. That's why sometimes I didn't even want to ask any. Because I got a question as, I asked a question and I got an answer as my father. And then, the first answer I got was biblical. And that's why I can roll scriptures out today, because the first answer I always got was biblical. He gave me a biblical answer to every question I ever asked, no matter what that question was. And then he gave me an answer as my father. And then he would turn around and give me an answer as a man. He gave me the man's perspective, and his whole tone would change. Like, let me tell you about that dude. I mean, the whole conversation would shift. So I was never they friends. And I was a grown woman living in my own place, going back, and I was still never their friend. It was just, I'm never their friend. I don't know. So these kids, I don't like none of these kids, because if they their parents' friend, they have something that I didn't have, because I was never their friend. But I will tell you this, Pete, just so you know, and I know you hear what I'm saying. You're just not listening. You hear what I'm saying. You made a great statement. You said when they turn 40, that they heard you, or they, something will ring in their head. Right now, today, my mother's been gone 23 years. My daddy's been gone 13. This is 23 for her and 13 for him. And I'm gonna tell you, sayings and things that they have said to me and advice that they have given still rings in my head and rings true today. And I'm glad they said it to me. And I'm glad I came up in the household I did. And it was the household where, yeah, I would take your life. That was the household I came up in. So, my mother's favorite saying was, I gave you life and I'll take it. And she meant it. And I knew she meant it. So, Dorothy Murphy says, good evening. She is here with us just as well. But yeah, question. We have abundance of a lot of different issues dealing with stress. Could it come from what we're dealing with now? And if so, how do we deal with our youth that are so stressed out?
I think I'm not gonna. I'm dealing with my great grandkids at this point in my life, and grandkids, so it's a little different. But I would say this: one of the things, to get back to our original discussion around social media and what it's done, it's stripped us in many ways of patience. There's no patience anymore. Everything has got to happen like now. If I don't get a response back from you instantaneously, there's a problem. I don't know about y'all, but I grew up in a house when sometimes my mother or my stepfather or somebody would, you'd ask a question. And sometimes my mother would look at me and she said, boy, just keep living. Just keep living. And I didn't know what that meant at that point in time. But I know what it means now. And a lot of times it's what they were really saying is that, from one way, and other people on the panel can comment, but you don't know enough to know what I'm talking about right now. You ain't mature enough to understand what I'm going to really say. So you got to be here a while longer to be able to understand. And I'm going to tell them, I call those things knowledge bombs. And every now and then, as I grew up, a knowledge bomb would go off. And sometimes it didn't happen until I had my own kids. And then I got that, oh, that's what they were talking about. Yeah. And I don't know if that's happened to anybody else on this panel, but those things, those profound things, because neither of my parents were educated past grammar school. And so they grew up with what they called mother wit in those days, but they had real life learned lessons. And they knew that we were too young to really understand. And you had to live a little longer to have enough social investment and context to be able to even understand what they were about to say.
Yeah, I had those experiences, Terry, and in my household, they called it wisdom. Mm-hmm. You see, you can have knowledge. You can get that knowledge from a book, from something that somebody tells you. But in addition to that knowledge has to be some, it's like making some bread. I mean, you just can't just throw stuff together. It takes some working. And that knowledge and information got to be, like a fine wine. You just can't put it some grapes in the barrel and pull them out the next day and have that great wine. It takes some work and some just some sitting and letting things work in us to help our knowledge now become part of our wisdom. You see, you can talk with a young person who may not have had any experience, may have read, may have heard, may have seen something, and they can give you knowledge, but they haven't. That wisdom part of it has not developed yet, and therefore, we all have emotions and stuff like that, and sometimes the emotion take over and lead us to do certain things. Now, wisdom, if you have it, will calm you down and tell you, no, this is not the right thing to do, not the right time to do whatever you're going to do. And I think it's that wisdom there that it's not really something you can't get it from a book. You can't, and that's what your mom was talking about when she said you got to, you just keep on living, because now your knowledge will get mixed with that wisdom, and then you'll begin to understand. And yeah, we recognize that as we go along, man. When certain things happen and you recognize that I have now got the knowledge, that's when the light come on and say, okay, and it goes back 25, 30 years. And so I think it's wisdom that part of it, and that's what our parents had. You couldn't learn that in a book. You couldn't go to school to get that. That comes with living and life lessons and all these kinds of things that happen that develop us into who we are, and hopefully give us what we need to be able to get through life in a better way and be a better person.
And I think society, I think that because of the changes in technology and us needing information quick, and everybody got a cell phone, why don't I have a cell phone? All the things that have become our reality has, kind of unfortunately reduced the knowledge. So you would think all this technology would increase the knowledge. It may actually dilute it in a way, particularly the knowledge that comes from your home, where there's a certain value system that you're trying to teach your kids. So because society has changed, now we're being forced to change. And even the cell phone, I've said this before on this in this platform. In what world that it was okay for cell phones to be out in the open at work? In what world was that okay? Like, when did we make a rule that says, oh, it's okay to have your cell phones while you're making money for this organization? And so I think society has influenced how we parent. It also has created rules that tells the communities that we live in that you can't parent my child. I know when I was growing up, whoever was the adult in the community had the permission to parent the child. It was just different back then. Mm-hmm. And when I grew up, and it may still be this way in cases, but when you were part of a church family, the church had permission to parent you. And I remember when I used to play tennis at, again, Garfield Park and Columbus Park, and Officer Barry Batson, who, is now deceased, he had permission to be my father. He just had permission. And the teachers had permission to smack your hand back in the day. So we've created and there are lines to this. So you don't want to, go totally do a 360 and say it's okay to do things that are not appropriate. But I think the lines initially got blurry, and now they don't exist. And now we just live in a world where all the lessons that can be passed down to our children and to our community have been diluted by the things that are new. The good news is that our current state doesn't have to be our future state. So there's always opportunities to change our current state to something that's better. And I'm hoping, as we have conversations and as parents actually parent, that they'll learn that it's okay to have values and rules that you make, and your kids won't be harmed by that. In fact, they'll probably become better parents because you did that. So let's not be afraid that our kids are not our friends, but our kids, and that's a better model. And it won't create confusion in them about what those lines are.
Tony, when you were talking, I was thinking that we can use more of listening to Dr. Mason, Dr. Graham, Dr. Miller on social media, because I believe it's the lack of competition. It's like they're getting fed the garbage on a more regular basis than I get to interact with a Dr. Miller. I don't get to interact with Dr. Miller but once a week on couch conversations with the doctors. But I'm getting fed the garbage all day. And so I think where we can compete, and one example of this is I did a just kind of funny joke just because I'm a big goofball at heart. But I just did like a TikTok video with the famous rapper called Takeoff. He just recently passed again from senseless gun violence. But I did this TikTok video. So I'm at the gym and it went viral or something like that, whatever. But anyway, I'm at the gym, I'm working out, and this lady comes up to me and says, "Hey, are you the ice doc?" And I was like, "The who?" I'm like, "The who?" And so I
Yeah,
remember what
I saw it.
yeah. So once I remembered, and I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, okay, pass me the weight right there." But anyway, so she says, "Well, I want you to know, my students. I'm a teacher. My students came and showed me a video, and they thought it was really funny." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool, that's great." So then she said, but the next thing is, she said that that some of her students said that they had never seen a Black doctor before. And it sort of shook me, because I'm saying to myself, that's really sad that in this day you have kids who don't know that we exist. And and also that we laugh, we like to have fun. We're real people. Like, we might go to their churches, no, we don't wear the white coats and things like that. But in other words, like, we're real people. We're really, and it's something that they could obtain. It really is. So I think that we're missing in the space that is dominating their thoughts and actions. And so if I were to leave here, I would say all of us need to become more present on social media, just so they can get some of this wisdom, because where else is it going to come from? Some of their parents are not making wise decisions, right? So where will it come from? They need just a blurb. You ain't got to be all deep and everything. You got, I don't know the script. I don't know. I just know God says something in that, Peter, feed my sheep. I don't know where it came from. I'm just telling you that. I'm just saying, like, they need to hear it from us. They need to hear from us. Really intelligent, thoughtful men. Many of them have had interactions with very either that or no interactions from men, right? Other than men that's trying to manipulate them and things like that. So I just think we need to be more present on those social media platforms so that they can see something positive. And even if it's something that's funny or something that's very educational, but most important, they can see our face and say, "Oh, I relate to this person."
Pete, you bring up some of
Outstanding. Complete.
the Judge Bentham used. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Dr. Mason.
No, I'm just saying Judge Bentham.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
What he used to say when we were in med school, to your point, Pete, he would say, "You can't be what you can't see." And, the profundity of some of these things, these little, what I call knowledge bombs that we would get from time to time, were real. And I think that's what I hear you saying. Just this past weekend, we had the mini medical school graduation at Rush, where these were 4th and 5th graders that were graduating from the little mini medical school program that CPAS, Creating Pathways for Academic Student Success. Dr. Whitaker and some other folks were on that board, along as myself. But it was we had an actual graduation. They just actually stand up and all say a motto, and then they were each given a stethoscope as part of when they walked across the aisle. So we are trying to create more pathways, more things, and I'll be happy to at some point, talk more about it, because it's like Judge Bentham said, you can't be what you can't see. And there's some truth to that. And I think that's what I hear you saying, Pete. And we just have to be there to help, do nothing else but counter the narrative that there's nothing else but what they're doing. And that, I think, is, and maybe we do use some social media to help us do that. I don't even know what TikTok is or any of that stuff. Or TikTok, whatever it's called. I don't even know what it is. I've never used it. I don't even know what it's. What?
Press the red button to carry and talk. Press the red button and talk. That's all you got to do.
I don't know what it is. I don't even know where it is. So maybe Pete, you could tell me. I don't know anything about it.
My
my grandson probably knows.
Of course
He
he does.
knows.
Oh, he
Yeah,
knows.
I agree. I think that what you're saying, Pete, is it's an important. We need our voices there, so that because if the only stuff that the young people are hearing is coming from folks who don't have wisdom, for the
That's
most
right.
part, and they're not necessarily trying to harm. They just don't know. You can only say
Right.
what you know. You can't teach somebody anything that you don't know. So they don't have the knowledge or the wisdom. Therefore, they're teaching them they're giving them what they have. But if we are on the sideline, we're not on the sideline. We're just not involved in that environment. So we're going to be up. So maybe we do need to look at ways that we can really create that present and give that information. I mean, to some extent, I try to do that, getting involved with some of the high schools in the Austin area, to be there as an older man who have done a few things, but just in order to talk to these young people and listen to them and try to help them to be able to uh, see that what they have heard is not the only narrative that's out there, and that okay, let's do that now. But the thing that I do recognize is that also, if it's only being said by one person, or only be said, if they only hear it one time, that's not enough. We need to have more folks saying it. We need to have it said more frequently and getting to where they are. You know, the scripture in the Bible that where the commandment is for the people of God to go into the hedges and highways and to teach. And we were having a discussion. Where is the hedges and highways? And my understanding is the hedges and the highways is where the people that need to be taught, those that may be lost, those that don't know, it's where they are, wherever that is. And it may not be where it was 30 years ago. I remember at a time we could go into a community and maybe walk and knock on people's doors and have conversation with them about things that we were trying to do. That just it is not really that practical right now. First of all, people are afraid. They don't know who you are, and you knock on their door. You may have good intentions, but there may be someone has knocked on that door who had bad intentions, or they've heard about that. So we do have to go to a place where they can feel safe and hear us. And so again, that may be social media, where they don't have any concern or worry about what may happen to them that physically that may be detrimental, but also what happened to them emotionally and mental, because people can tell you things that can get you into trouble as well. But yeah, I think that we do need to figure out ways that we can do this better, more effectively, more frequently, and also in bigger numbers.
Well, outstanding, outstanding. Audrey J. Cox says her mother would say, "Don't do anything stupid and go out and embarrass yourself or her or your family." She always says, "Yep, just keep living." Linda Johnson says, "You try to share with our youth of today that you cut the hole that they are trying to get through." Now that's interesting. That you all have cut the hole that they are trying to get through. And Miss Newkirk is here and she says, "Just keep living." She repeated that statement that Dr. Mason said, to just keep living. And you are absolutely right. I have there's a Bible scripture in Timothy, 2 Timothy 3:1-7. It talks about how our world will get weaker, but wiser. And I think that's some of the things that we are dealing with right now today, that is happening. We have all this social media and all of these things that are supposed to make us so much wiser, but we are crumbling in other areas. And you're right, we need to go out into those highways and byways and to begin to witness, which is what Pete was talking about in John 21, when Jesus told Simon Peter, "Go out here and feed my sheep." That's what he told him to do. Go feed my sheep. Chief Tally said, he said, just keep living, keep living. Well, I got to say that thing that you guys hate to hear me say, and that means that it's our time. So we're going to go around really, really quickly, and we're going to, ask everybody to give their until next Mondays. And that's what we're going to do really quickly. Ask people to give their until next Mondays. But until next Monday, I want you to mark your calendar. So I want you to remember to mark your calendar. And Miss Newkirk, you start telling people just as well. Mark your calendar for April 22nd. April 22nd will be an upcoming healthcare event that the congressman will be doing along with a number of our guests that are here. So remember, April 22nd, that's Saturday, April 22nd. And want to remind you, kind of share your morning with us at that time as we have as we have a robust conversation in reference to the state of our health. What's going on? The state of Black health from conception to expiration. So let's have that conversation. We're going to go around and do our Until Next Mondays. Dr. Tony Hampton, until next Monday.
I'll kind of just give some hope. Like when I think about the odds of me becoming a basketball player, I think we draft about 60 NBA players every year in the NBA. And of those 60, you may get 30 or so who actually end up having a career in the NBA. So the number is much higher to become a doctor. That's number one. But I have even better news. I'll be having dinner on Wednesday with Rashard Johnson, who used to be the president of Advocate Trinity and South Sub Hospital. He's now in the South region. Advocate, as you know, has merged. And so we have multiple hospitals in the South region, Georgia, Alabama, North and South Carolina. This young man is barely 40. He looks like myself and the rest of these people of color on this panel. And he is the president of multiple hospitals within our health system. So there's multiple ways to achieve your goal. You're like, well, what does a president of a hospital make, right? Well, it's certainly not less than what a doctor makes, and probably in $1 million range if it's a couple of hospitals. But if you start leading multiple hospitals, I think it's more than even $1 million. So now the beauty of that is that if you're the president, what does the average NFL player career last? I think most of us are aware it's about 3 years, right? So you say, man, that's a lot of money. Yeah, but the average is 3 years. So imagine having a job where you make 500 or $1 million or 2 million, and you can do it until you're dead, because that's what can happen when you do this type of work. So there's a lot of hope for our youth, but they need role models. I think the message that Dr. Pete shared is my wife's been telling me, get on Twitter. I mean, not Twitter, but get on, what's that other one that Dr. Mason, TikTok, right? I couldn't remember the name because I'm not on TikTok. But again, they need to see our faces. Right, Tick. So Dr. Pete, that was inspirational. And to think that people would think they wouldn't even know that we exist is mind-boggling. So we need to change that narrative. And I'm going to look into Tick, Dr. Mason, as soon as I can.
Absolutely. I think everybody needs a good TikTok video. Get your TikTok on. I think our youth just really need to be loved. When you show them some love, they actually change. And that's what they're seeking. Dr. Graham, you're until next Monday.
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth, because if your children are experiencing anxiety about the future, you need to let them know that you're going to be there for them, and that you will provide them some sense of security until they can feel secure. And the other thing is, you have to tell them that they're valued, that they don't have to have a certain shoe or a certain cell phone, a certain purse to be valued, that you value them. And that's the only way that I can think of that will help them under trying sets of circumstances. So you do have to show them love, as Nikki said.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. Miller, you're until next Monday.
Well, I think that as we look around, we have to look for solutions. I know we complain. There are a lot of problems, and it creates a lot of anxiety, a lot of distress. But I think that if we can begin to just look beyond the anxiety and the stress to the real problems and real solutions, because there are most problems, there are probably solutions if we can get there. And I think that we can get there if we begin to not get knocked down by the emotions and the stress that revolve around our problems in our communities and in our world as it is. So I'm saying let's begin to look beyond what we see as trouble and look at what is causing it and what are the answer to those problems, because I think if there we'll find ways to improve on what we need to improve on and to make our society, our community, our homes better.
All right. Dr. Mason, you're until next Monday.
I'm going to say that, there's a song that says, please be patient with me because God ain't through with me yet.
All
And
right
so,
now.
no, because I think that's what we said. It's just that we got to get to where the people are. So I will admit, I will commit to going to TikTok, learning what that is. I'll ask my grandson about it, because two things. Pencham said, you can't be what you can't see. And right now they don't see us. And the other thing is that it takes time. Just takes time. No matter what it is, it's going to take time. And so we have to be patient with that and know that somebody took time with us. And
That's
it's a
right.
different time now than it was then, because our parents didn't have to compete with social media. When we wanted to talk on the phone, you had to stand in the kitchen on the phone on a cord, and everybody hearing everything that you say. That's not the way it is today. And wasn't no such thing as no private conversations. If you had a conversation, everybody heard it. And so maybe some of that actually did help to police some of our behaviors in a way that we didn't know. And not that we'll go back to that, but I think that there's some elements that we could take from it that might be helpful. So Pete, if you show me TikTok, right? I'll talk and tick with it.
That conversation was privately open. Very good. Well, Pete, as you give us your until next Monday, take us home just as well.
Yeah, I was thinking, Nikki, I saw a patient this week, last week, sorry, and the staff was very anxious about this patient because of a variety of reasons, but they're known to be a little bit on the disruptive side. And so, of course, they say, well, we want the boss to see the patient. Okay, fine. I'm the medical director. You want me to see him? And I remember, just kind of getting a story about what was going on with them. And the patient had fired most of the doctors at the clinic. And so, of course, I'm the last one that they're going to go see. And I just remember walking in the room, and part of me was just saying, I'm in the caregiver side. I'm there to deliver care. I'm not there to contribute to the turmoil that allowed this person to be disruptive and fiery, and everybody's the enemy and da 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 da. And so I just want us and the audience to remember the position you're in. God ordained it that you will be in a position to help somebody. And my job was to act as compassionate as I could and to solve problems. He needed a medication refilled, and everybody was keeping him from getting the medicine. That wasn't true, but that was his truth. And so in his mind, everybody there was trying to keep him from getting this medicine. Now, my job was to say, hey, I'm here to help. Let me listen to you. And then what we found out, we unpacked a lot of things there. But the point is, we got to be compassionate, like Dr. Mason said. We have to be in a sort of spirit of caregiving, right? So part of me is, when I'm doing some of the TikToks, yes, I'm doing some education about eczema and all those other kind of interesting stuff. But part of it is exposure. It's like, hey, I'm a real person. I don't talk with a fake voice. I'm not pretending like I'm somebody. I'm from the South Side of Chicago. This is who I am, but I'm accomplished and I'm good at what I do. But I'm not going to pretend like I'm not a Black man from Chicago. And so when we give people our authentic self and we stay in the caregiver mode, it's amazing what God can do.
Amen.
Bishop, until next Monday. See you guys later. Good night.
Good night. Pete, I'm going to call you.